Hello and welcome to another edition of Jazz Improv with Mr. P Fan. For today's lesson, we'll be discussing how to take a solo on the blues. In jazz music, you will come across many different types of blues with all different types of chord changes. The most basic of the blues has only 3 chords in it: a 1 chord, a 4 chord, and a 5 chord, and all of them are dominant 7th chords. So you will see here that they're written in Roman numerals 1-7, 4-7, and 5-7. Let's take a listen to the blues. Like I said, the blues is split up into 3 different phrases. This is an example of a blues in the key of C. Phrase 1 starts with a C7 chord, and there are 4 measures of C7. That's C dominant chord. The reason it's called a 1 chord in the key of C is because C is the first note in that scale. Phrase 2 has a 4 chord in the beginning because F is the 4th note of the C major scale. 2 measures of 4-7, and then 2 measures of 1-7. The third phrase starts on the 5 chord. G is the 5th note of a C major scale. So we have 5, 4, and then 2 1 chords. Take a look and find your instrument group. Now, for the blues, all of the chords are dominant chords, and the scale that goes along with dominant chords is called mixolydian. Remember from the previous video, a mixolydian scale is like a major scale with a flatted 7th. So, find your group right now, and for this blues, you will need to know 3 different scales. I labeled them scale 1, scale 2, and scale 3. Scale 1 is actually the 1 chord in the key of B flat major, or concert B flat major. The second scale that's listed is your 4 chord, and the third scale that's listed is your 5 chord. So take a look where it says number 1, and let's play the concert B flat mixolydian scale in half notes. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, go. Back down. Now let's play the second scale that's listed. This is your 4 chord in your key. Let's play scale number 2 in half notes. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and... And now we'll play scale number 3, which is your 5 chord in the blues. Here's scale number 3. 1, 2, set, and... At this point, you might want to pause the video and practice the 3 scales that go along with your group, as you're going to need to be very familiar with these scales moving forward. Next, I'm going to talk about phrase 1. In phrase 1, we have all 1 chords, and they're all dominant chords. So the first phrase of the blues has 4 measures of just 1-7, or concert B flat 7. On the next slide, I'll show you some scales that you can use, going up and down the mixolydian scale. Since the B flat 7 chord lasts for 4 measures in this phrase, we're going to go up and down the scale every 2 measures. Let's try this. We'll play the 4 measure phrase 2 times. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead and pause and practice this scale going up and down in eighth notes. In phrase 2, it introduces the 4 chord on the first 2 measures, and then goes back to your 1 chord for the second 2 measures. So for this phrase, we're going to need 2 scales, our 1 chord Mixolydian scale and our 4 chord Mixolydian scale. On this slide, you'll see the scales written out for your group. Again, we're going to go up and down in eighth notes. Get set. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's repeat it. Go. Once again, at this point, if you would like, go ahead and pause the video and practice it as many times as you'd like. In phrase 3, we're going to need all 3 of the scales that we've prepared. Phrase 3 starts on the 5 chord, then the 4 chord, and then the 1 chord for 2 measures. So for this phrase, we're only going to play the scales going up for the first measure and for the second measure. And then for the last 2 measures, we can play the scale going up and down as we did before. Let's try phrase 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now before we try the entire song with all of those scales, let's try a couple of practice exercises. First thing I'd like you to do is to follow along with your group, and each measure I would like you to play a whole note of the starting note of each chord. So if you're in group 1, you're going to play a B flat for 4 beats, then another B flat for 4 beats in each measure. Then when you get to measure 5, it'll be an E flat for 4 beats, and you just follow along. So everybody's going to play the root of the chord, first note of every scale. Here we go. Get set. 1, 2, 1, 2, first note, and. Now the fourth note. Back to 1. Here comes 5 chord. 4, back to 1. Next, I'd like you to try playing the first 3 notes of every scale. So it'll sound like this. We'll play it with that rhythm. 1, 2, and. Then it'll be the 4 chord. So let's try it right from the beginning. Here we go. Get set. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, and. Four chord. Five chord. 4 chord, 1 chord. Next, let's try the first 5 notes of every chord, and we'll play them like this. 1 and 2 and 3. Let's give it a shot. Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 chord. Okay, now we're ready to try the entire song with all of those eighth note scales we practiced earlier in the lesson. I've included some documents below in the description with all of the scales written out for each instrument. Okay, get set. 1, here we go. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, why are we practicing all of these different things? Well, eventually we want to be able to use these notes and use these scales to create our own melody, which is improvisation. I'm going to demonstrate for you a one-chorus solo over the B-flat blues using only the notes in those scales. But the trick is you have to keep track of where you are in the music so that you don't get lost and that you're playing the right scale tones at the right time. So make sure you're counting as you play. I'll just do a demonstration of a solo only using notes in the Mixolydian scales. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to put on a recording of the blues 3 times in a row so that you can practice any of these different exercises, playing the scales, playing your own rhythms, playing just the first note, playing just the third note, playing just the fifth note. There's many ways to go about this. So have fun practicing, and here is a recording on loop for 3 choruses of a blues. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here comes the 4 chord. Back to 1. Here comes the 5 chord. Now 4. Back to 1. Here's the top 2, ready, and